Hello, happy whatever day you're watching this. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the cost of a pet. You guys did your own little project on the cost of a pet. But cost is not the only consideration that you should take when you are getting a pet. So most of today's discussion lecture is going to be on those considerations. But before we get to that point, I do want to jump this. I don't want you to write down. This is just more of a FYI of the economic impact of pets. We looked at an individual owning an animal. How much does it cost? Well, this is nationwide. I found these numbers. They're 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. So they're a couple years old, but this is the economic impact nationwide of pets. First of all, it's a $78.9 billion industry. Food is a $32.3 billion industry. Vet care, $21 billion. Live animal purchases are only $2.1 billion. So remember, we talked a lot about how that sticker price, that cost of getting your pet, is such a small drop in the bucket compared to everything else. Well, our national numbers show that the live animal purchase is not even a tenth. Well, it is a tenth of vet care and not even a tenth of food expenses. Pet services, $8 billion for grooming, boarding, and 1.3 million jobs, a little over 1.3 million, are directly related to companion animals. So there's a lot of jobs available for people who are interested in companion animals. As I said, you don't have to write, you don't have to write that down. If you already did, congratulations, you did extra. We're going to skip through the next two slides because we're not worrying about them right now. What we do want to worry about is questions to ask yourself when you are selecting a pet. This is important. First thing you're going to ask, well, maybe not the first thing, but one of the things you're going to ask is, where should I get the pet? There's a lot of options, from pet shops, direct sale from breeders, animal and humane shelters, friends, neighbors, family. I said friends and neighbors yesterday, and somebody was like, well, it could also be family. I'm like, yeah, that all falls under that friends and neighbors category. Each one has their positives and negatives. Direct sale from breeder, you probably have some sort of parental history that goes along with it. Pet shop, you might not always. Humane societies, you usually don't. But those animals tend to come vaccinated, spayed and neutered if they're old enough. Where pet shop and breeders, that usually isn't the case. They don't come vaccinated, spayed and neutered. Friends and neighbors, it might be free, trying to get rid of a dog. On the flip side, you probably aren't going to have them vaccinated, spay, neuter, that kind of thing. So each one has advantages, has disadvantages, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. My family, we have done all of these but pet shops. I have not gotten I've gotten fish from pet shops, I suppose. I haven't gotten dogs or cats or anything from pet shops, but we have my oldest dog, Stella. She's no longer with us, but my family got her when I was in elementary school. She was from a breeder. She was a purebred German Shepherd. Brian, Marvin, Brian and Marvin are my mom and stepdad's dogs, and now Gemma too is in that crew. They all came from shelters. I usually look at shelters just because I like looking at dogs. But those were all shelters. Carly, Doug, those were my dad's dogs. They came from friends and neighbors. So again, just because you're like, I usually get shelter dogs, doesn't mean you always do. They all have their positives and negatives. One thing that you should think about is space. You don't have to write down one bedroom versus a rural house unless that's going to help you remember anything. But those living conditions are very different. You do want to write down space. I live in a small apartment, not really much of a yard. As much as I love black labs or golden retrievers, they probably wouldn't be too happy in my house. On the flip side, again, my parents are both, my mom and stepdad and my dad live out in the country. Big yards, big spaces for them to run. Yeah, we had big, energetic dogs growing up because they had that space to run and just be dogs. And neither one is wrong. You just have to take it into consideration. Lifestyle. Again, you don't have to write down dog versus cat versus hamster and gerbil, but think of your lifestyle. If you are someone who's not home a lot, a dog being left home alone all the time is not going to be happy. Cats can tolerate it a little more. Some cats will get lonely if you're gone all the time. Hamsters and gerbils, they're not going to care. Are you super energetic? Do you want a companion that's going to go on hikes with you, go kayaking with you, that kind of thing? Well, a hamster gerbil probably won't. A cat might. There are situations that cats will like go kayaking or whatever. They tend not to enjoy it too much, but there are some. Hiking, cats are not distance animals. They are sprinters. So I've read articles about how to take your cat hiking with you. And the biggest thing is be prepared to carry him or her because they can't walk that whole way. But being aware of what your lifestyle, what you want to do with the animal. If you're someone who sits around and watches Netflix and plays video games all day, you don't want a super energetic dog that you have to constantly be going on runs with. However, if you live a very active lifestyle and you're home a lot, again, like I use my stepdad as an example. He's a farmer, so he's home all the time. Yeah, we have 3 super energetic dogs, but there's always someone home. Well, not always, but pretty much always someone home with them. And they spend a lot of the day running around. They live a lifestyle that active dogs are very happy in. Again, in my apartment, where I'm at school 8, 9, 10 hours a day, a German Shepherd would not be happy there. So being aware of how that lifestyle plays an impact in which pet you should get. Cost. Again, we've talked this a lot. Yeah, cost does play a factor into it. You need to look past that initial cost. Yeah, I can look at Pet Finder right now and I can find a dog for $350 and I know I have more than that in the bank and I could get myself a dog like that if I really wanted to. But we got to think about food, we got to think about a kennel, we got to think about toys, we got to think about damages. If you rent an apartment, you have to think about any extra pet fees. I know my landlord charges just a little extra, but a lot will charge an extra $50 a month for a pet. Or an extra $100 a month. You have to know what your rental agreement is. Vet expenses, all of that can really, really quickly add up. If you own your own house, obviously you don't have to worry about rental expenses, but you might have to worry about any damage they might cause, any holes they dig up in your yard, anything like that. Future plans. This is really, really, really important for those of you who are in high school right now. Because in the next 1 to 4 years, do you still plan on being at home with your family? Do you plan on going off somewhere, whether it's to school or to get a job out in North Dakota or just travel because you're not tied down to anything? Well, a pet's going to make those plans a lot more complicated. As I said, when you're renting a house, it's a lot harder to find a pet-friendly house than it is to find a pet-friendly house. When I was looking for apartments up here, I didn't have a pet, but thought about maybe someday I might want to. And trying to find an apartment that's pet-friendly is hard. And it depends on the area, but you're usually going to have to pay more for it. So being aware of that. When you're not ready to buy a house yet. If you're sticking around home, maybe, but think of the life expectancy of that animal. Think of the life expectancy. Dogs live 12, 13, 14 years. Are you going to be in the same place over the next 12, 13 years? Are you going to be able to find constant care for that animal? Cats can live up to 20 years, sometimes a little more. So think 20 years from now, you'll be in your upper 30s. Your life's going to look a lot different than it does now. And if you have a pet, you have to adjust for that. My family and consumer science teacher when I was in middle school had parakeets. And she spent a day just talking about her parakeets one time, just for funsies. And they were sounded super cool. But she made it very clear that they're not for everyone. One of the big things is they can have a 50, 60-year life expectancy. And when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, even a little older, that moving around, that instability at that age as you're trying to figure out where you want to be, settle down, all of that, can be really hard to commit to a long life expectancy animal. So being aware of that. Will the pet still be wanted when it gets older? Hopefully, yes. There are numerous animals that are dropped off at shelters after they lose their puppy cuteness. And will you have time to take care of it years from now? As I just talked about that life expectancy bit. Some of you are going off from Deer River in a couple years. Will that lifestyle that you're hoping to take a part of, whatever it may be allowing of whatever pet that you want? There's a reason why in college dorms a lot of people get fish. One, it's the only pet that they're allowed to have, but two, they don't take a lot of time. It's pretty easy to have a fish and just keep it there. So something you really have to keep in mind, future plans. You also have to look at who wants it. Every member of the family has to be on board. Yeah, there's plenty of stories of people being like, yeah, I just hid my whatever pets in my bedroom and my grandma hasn't known about it, whatever. But if every family member is not on board, you're gonna have some problems. Someone's not going to be as happy as everybody else, and it can lead to some fights, and the animal can get caught in the middle. If someone has allergies, there's another issue that you will have to fight. Obviously, if someone has allergies, they're more likely to give up that pet. You also have to look at your personality. Animals have personalities just like people. So look up breeds, do some research, see what animals fit your personality. Also, be careful that it's not a fad or status symbol. Because once the fad fades away, the animals are left unwanted and abandoned. Some examples of this: Dalmatians. After the movie 101 Dalmatians, a bunch of people really wanted Dalmatians. And so breeders went crazy breeding Dalmatians. Ended up with a lot of inbreeding. Also, Dalmatians are not known for being the most friendly dogs ever. Yeah, some of it's with raising, but they tend not to be the type of dogs for little kids. So a lot of these families who just had kids who watched 101 Dalmatians and really wanted a Dalmatian would go get this Dalmatian, and the Dalmatian would not fit in their family. And so a lot of them ended up abandoned. Clownfish, after Finding Nemo. Again, a lot of people wanted clownfish, which resulted in destruction of reefs because people would go and try to capture the clownfish to be sold. Same thing happened with the blue tang, the dory fish. A little less extreme, I think, because people really were pushing that blue tangs are not meant for captivity. They don't breed in captivity, so they had to be captured. But either one, they were the status symbol, and people weren't properly prepared to take care of them. So that ends this slideshow. I hope you have a super fabulous day. and I will see you in the near future.